Hello, everyone. Is capitalism responsible for the plight of artists and of writers in the world? Does art only suffer because of capitalism? Because a lot of people like to blame everything on capitalism, which, yes, capitalism in some ways does hinder writing and the artistic process, but I don't think it can be solely responsible. And I also don't think that the alternatives offered to capitalism are necessarily any better, although they may have certain advantages. Because, yes, it is true that in capitalism, art tends to be valued only insofar as it can make money. And, uh, and art often is not valued for its own sake. However, I don't think that that can be blamed solely on capitalism because in many cases, you have to look at market demand. What do people want, and what comes first, the chicken or the egg problem? Um, do people value certain kinds of art or bad art because they or ignore art because they're not given anything different, or is it because their taste is just that bad initially? And of course, this was a question that they were discussing that I saw in an interview, but in a conversation between the writer and Rod Serling, and the host of the Twilight Zone, and the poet author James Dickey, who wrote oh, what's the name of that movie? Um, the movie, the hillbilly movie where they were with cannibals. I forget the name of the movie right now. Um, but I'll probably remember right after this. Uh, but anyway, um, they were discussing about, okay, well, what is the primary reason why people do not like art or whatever, and Serling's diagnosis was that y- yes, corporations often play a role in distorting what people want, but at the same time, there the audiences often just long for a sense of escape, a sense and they lean far more towards that than they do towards consuming serious art, and that would be true regardless of what kind of system you had, whether it was capitalism or anything else. And so I don't think it can all be blamed on capitalism. Now, with that being said, it is also certainly true that corporations do play a role in shaping what people want, because a lot of corporations like to think, oh well, we're only responding to market demand. But here's the thing: is that if as a corporation or as a publishing company, if you believe that only a certain kind of art will succeed, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if people aren't exposed to other kinds of art, then of course they won't appreciate it if they're never exposed to it. If someone only, for example, is eats burgers at a burger joint, if they've never been exposed to fine dining, then of course they're not going to be a fan of fine dining at first. So it's false that artists, that publishers can only create money by capitulating to the lower instincts of society. That's a false proposition. What they really mean is they want to make as much money while also putting in as little effort as possible. And that's the real reason. However, I don't think that the alternatives to capitalism would necessarily do any better, because in communism, for example, a lot of people don't know this. That there is no such thing as copyright. Copyright does not exist under communism, because the communist belief is that everyone has the right to share, the wealth that they receive from that an artist receives from their work, because the idea is, well, because they grow up in the education system and therefore the society should get a piece of the pie, and and so copyright does not exist under communism at all. And the thing is about communism is that it does not recognize things like individual achievement, individual merit. Everything goes to the group. It's all about the group, not the individual, which is and which is the antithesis of art. It doesn't, and I also think that artists who work independently, painters, novelists who primarily work independently, um, they don't really fit into capitalism or communism because in cap because they don't fit into capitalism because they're not primarily concerned with making money. They don't fit into the corporate world or infrastructure. But at the same time, they don't. Communists tend to be very suspicious of artists, especially artists who work independently, because they're not part of their worker co-op or collective. Artists who work independently, and anyone who works independently is considered a threat to the collective or the co-op. And so I don't think artists really fit well, or writers fit well in capitalism or communism. But however, at least in capitalism, there's artists. There's a chance that an artist could succeed in capitalism, yeah, despite their odds being very low. Whereas in communism, there's practically no chance because everything is controlled. So, yes, there are problems with capitalism. There are also problems with alternative systems. I don't think really any system, capitalism or otherwise, would perfectly serve the interests of artists, at least in this day and age.